Hi everyone, welcome back to Insight Avenue. Today, I want to share with you a special success story. Success stories usually begin with talent, money, or luck. This one begins with rejection. A young man fails exams, fails interviews, fails even at a fast food job. No one expects him to change the world. Not his teachers, not companies, not even himself. But one day, he searches for a simple word on the internet and finds something missing. That absence becomes an idea. That idea becomes a mission. And that mission becomes Alibaba. This is not a story about becoming rich. It is a story about standing up after being ignored, about understanding people when systems fail them, about building belief before building technology. As you listen, you will not only follow a business journey, you will train your English, strengthen your confidence, and discover how ordinary people create extraordinary change. Let's begin at zero. Jack Ma's story does not begin with intelligence, wealth, or opportunity. It begins with limitation. He was born in 1964, in a time when China was closed to the outside world. There was no internet, no global trade, and almost no contact with foreign countries. His family lived a simple life. His parents were traditional performers, earning just enough to survive. There were no powerful connections in his home, no safety net waiting for him. At school, Jack struggled early. Mathematics was his greatest enemy. Exams became walls he could not climb. Important tests defeated him again and again. He failed entrance exams that most students passed. Each failure added another quiet message from the world. You are not good enough. When school ended, rejection followed him into adult life. He applied for many jobs and was turned away repeatedly. Even positions that required little experience refused him. When a foreign fast food company hired nearly everyone who applied, Jack was the only one rejected. Not because he lacked effort, but because he did not fit the image they wanted. Many people would accept that verdict and stop trying. Jack did not. Physically, he was small and weak. Academically, he was behind others. Socially, he had no advantage. But he had something difficult to measure: persistence. He spoke. He asked questions. He tried again. While others focused on grades, Jack focused on communication. He practiced English by talking to tourists for free. He listened carefully. He learned how people think, how they decide, how they trust. He was not training to be the best student. He was training to understand humans. Failure slowly changed its role in his life. It stopped being an ending. It became preparation. Every rejection strengthened his ability to stand in front of people and speak with confidence. Every mistake taught him patience. Without realizing it, he was building the one skill that would later define his career: the ability to inspire belief. At this stage, there was no dream of building a company. There was no plan for technology. Jack Ma was simply surviving in a system that did not reward him. But survival sharpened his awareness. It forced him to look beyond himself. He began to notice something important. Many people around him were talented, hardworking, and honest, but invisible. They had no platform, no voice, no way to reach opportunity. The problem was not ability. The problem was access. This realization did not yet have a name, but it had direction. Jack Ma was not preparing to win quickly. He was learning how the world treats those with nothing, and that understanding would later become the foundation of everything he built. Jack Ma returned to China carrying something invisible: no product, no technology, no money, only a question that refused to leave him alone. Why was China missing from the internet? At that time, the internet was not a tool in China. It was a rumor. Most people had never touched a computer. Businesses did not understand websites. The idea of selling online sounded unreal, even foolish. But Jack had seen something powerful. He had seen connection. What shocked him was not the technology itself, it was the absence. When he searched for information online, the world appeared instantly. Countries, brands, cultures, everything was there, except China. In that moment, Jack understood something deeply important. If you are not present, you do not exist. And if China did not exist online, its people would be left behind. That realization became his direction. Jack did not say, "I want to be rich." He said, "I want China to be seen." Back home, he gathered the few people who were willing to listen. None of them were engineers. None were investors. They were teachers, friends, believers. Together, they created a simple website called China Pages. It was nothing fancy, just basic information about Chinese companies, written in English so the world could find them. It failed. The market was not ready. The infrastructure was weak. The cost was too high. But failure did not feel the same anymore. This time, it taught him something. Technology alone does not change a country. People must understand why it matters. Jack watched carefully. Chinese factories could make products cheaply, but they could not reach buyers. Small businesses had skills, but no voice. They were invisible, not because they were weak, but because the system ignored them. That was the real problem. Jack began to shape a bigger idea. Not a website for information, but a platform for opportunity. A place where small businesses could stand on equal ground with big companies. A system where geography did not decide destiny. In Ninitai, he invited 17 people into his small apartment. No office, no guarantee, just an idea written on a board. He told them, "Let's build a platform that helps Chinese businesses sell to the world." Most people outside the room laughed. Banks said no. Experts said it was too late. The internet already had leaders. China had no chance. But the people in that room said yes. They did not invest in technology. They invested in belief. They named the company Alibaba, not for China, not for the West, but for the world. A name easy to remember. A story everyone knew. A symbol of opening doors. Jack was honest from the start. He told them, "I don't understand code. I don't know how to build software, but I understand people." And that understanding would become Alibaba's greatest advantage, because the goal was never to build a website. The goal was to change who gets a chance. Ideas are fragile in the beginning. They do not fail because they are wrong. They fail because no one protects them. In 1999, Jack Ma had no office, no investors, no reputation as a business leader. What he had was a living room. Inside that small apartment, he invited 17 people. Friends, former colleagues, people who trusted him more than the idea itself. They sat close together, not because of teamwork, but because there was no space. Jack stood in front of them and spoke with clarity. He did not promise money. He did not promise success. He said, "Let's build a platform where small Chinese businesses can sell to the world." At that time, this sounded unrealistic. E-commerce barely existed in China. Most people did not own computers. Internet connections were slow and unreliable. Banks did not believe online trade could work. And no one believed a former English teacher could lead a tech company. Outside that room, people laughed. Inside the room, people listened. Jack explained the mission carefully. This was not about beating anyone. It was about giving small factories, family businesses, and local sellers a chance to be seen. He believed the future economy would not be controlled by giants alone, but by millions of small players, if they were given the right tools. The 17 people did something rare. They said yes, not because the plan was perfect, but because they believed in the purpose. Together, they collected $60,000 from their own savings. It was not venture capital. It was personal risk. There was no salary guarantee, no safety net. If it failed, they would lose everything. They named the company Alibaba. The name was simple. easy to remember, known across cultures. For Jack, it represented opening doors. He wanted small businesses to say the right words and step into opportunity, just like the story. From the beginning, Jack made one thing clear. "I am not a technology expert," he said. "I don't know how to write code." Instead of hiding this weakness, he built around it. He focused on vision, on communication, on trust. He knew how to sell an idea, not a product. He knew how to build belief before building systems. Alibaba's early days were slow and difficult. The team worked long hours in a tiny space. They had no revenue model, no clear profit plan. Their first platform focused on business-to-business connections, allowing small factories to introduce themselves to global buyers. They did not charge fees. They did not chase profit. They chased users. This decision confused many people. Without money coming in, critics said the company would collapse. But Jack understood something others did not. Trust must come before transactions. If people believed in the platform, money would follow later. Every day felt uncertain, but one thing was solid: the mission. Alibaba was not being built to impress investors. It was being built to serve people who had never been served. Alibaba was still young when the storm arrived. The platform was growing slowly but steadily. Thousands of small Chinese factories were joining. Messages were being sent across borders. For the first time, sellers who had never spoken to a foreign buyer were being noticed. But Jack Ma understood one thing very clearly: growth attracts attention, and attention attracts giants. At the beginning of the 2000s, eBay was already a global superpower. It dominated online auctions in the West. It had money, technology, brand recognition, and experience. When eBay decided to enter China, the market shook. They did not enter quietly. eBay bought the largest Chinese auction platform at that time and moved fast. Media headlines were confident. Experts made predictions. Many people said the same sentence again and again: Alibaba is finished. Compared to eBay, Alibaba looked weak. eBay had cash. Alibaba had belief. eBay had systems. Alibaba had ideas. Jack Ma heard the noise, but he did not panic. Instead of copying eBay, he chose the opposite path. He asked a simple question: what do Chinese users really need? eBay focused on auctions and efficiency. Jack focused on trust. Chinese consumers were afraid of online shopping. If they sent money, would the product arrive? If there was a problem, who would help them? Technology alone could not solve fear. Trust had to be designed. So Jack launched a new platform, Taobao. From the outside, it looked simple, but its philosophy was different. While eBay charged fees to list and sell products, Taobao was completely free. While eBay used a clean, Western-style design, Taobao felt local. Bright colors, busy pages, familiar language. It looked like a digital street market, not a silent auction hall. Most importantly, Jack added something unexpected: conversation. Taobao allowed buyers and sellers to chat directly before purchasing. People could ask questions, negotiate, and build confidence. Shopping stopped feeling mechanical. It started feeling human. This small feature changed everything. Sellers felt respected. Buyers felt safer. Relationships formed before transactions. eBay did not understand this shift. They believed size and global experience were enough. Their decisions were often made far from China. Their platform felt foreign. Their customer service felt distant. Alibaba stayed close to its users. Jack repeated the same message to his team: we are not here to defeat eBay. We are here to help small businesses win. As Taobao grew, another problem became obvious: payments. People still feared sending money online. To solve this, Jack introduced a new system that would later change digital finance in China. A middle step: money would be held safely until both sides were satisfied. This idea broke habits. It broke fear, and it broke the market open. The competition slowly shifted. Traffic moved. Users chose trust over brand power. Local understanding beat global dominance. By the time eBay realized the problem, it was too late. Their platform felt out of place. Alibaba felt like home. The war ended quietly. No announcement. No celebration. eBay stepped back from China. Taobao remained. A small team with limited resources had defeated a global giant, not through technology, but through understanding people. Defeating eBay was not the end of Alibaba's journey. It was the beginning of a much larger vision. Jack Ma understood something most entrepreneurs miss. A single product can win a battle, but only a system can win the future. Taobao had proven that trust mattered. Now the challenge was scale. As millions of users joined the platform, new problems appeared. Sellers needed better tools. Buyers wanted safer payments. Delivery was slow and unreliable. And brands wanted a more professional environment. If Alibaba failed to solve these issues, growth would collapse under its own weight. So Jack did not build one company. He built an ecosystem. First came Alibaba.com, the original business-to-business platform. It connected factories and wholesalers directly with buyers around the world. For many small manufacturers, this was the first time they had access to global demand. They were no longer invisible. Then Taobao continued to grow as a consumer-to-consumer marketplace. Ordinary people sold everyday products to each other. It felt informal, flexible, and open. But as trust increased, something new was needed. That need created Tmall. Tmall was designed for brands. It offered higher standards, official stores, and better control over quality. Customers who wanted reliability could now shop with confidence. Sellers who wanted reputation could build it openly. Alibaba was no longer just a market. It was becoming a structured economy. Payments remained the most sensitive issue. To protect both sides of every transaction, Alibaba expanded its escrow system into a full digital payment service. Money was held safely until buyers confirmed delivery. This simple rule changed behavior. Fear decreased. Confidence increased. Online shopping became normal. Logistics was the next obstacle. China was large. Infrastructure was uneven. Deliveries were slow. So Alibaba began building a logistics network that connected warehouses, delivery partners, and data systems. The goal was not to own every truck, but to coordinate the entire flow. Packages became trackable. Routes became smarter. Time became predictable. Behind all of this was data. As millions of transactions moved through Alibaba's platforms, information became a powerful resource. To manage it, Alibaba invested heavily in cloud computing. This allowed sellers to analyze demand, manage inventory, and scale without building their own systems. What began as internal infrastructure soon became a service for others. At this point, Alibaba was no longer comparable to a single Western company. It was not just an Amazon. It was not just a PayPal. It was not just a logistics firm. It was all of them combined. But Jack continued to reject one label. "We are not a technology company," he said. "We are a company that serves people using technology." Every new service followed the same principle. Reduce barriers. Increase access. Empower small players. Alibaba's success was not measured only in revenue, but in participation. Millions of individuals and businesses were now part of the digital economy. The system was working. And when a system works at scale, the world starts paying attention. By the early 2010s, Alibaba was no longer just a Chinese success story. It had become a system used by hundreds of millions of people. But Jack Ma believed recognition inside China was not enough. If Alibaba wanted to prove its value, it had to face the world. So he made a bold decision. Alibaba would go public, not in China, not in Hong Kong, but in New York. This choice surprised many people. Most Chinese companies stayed close to home, protected by familiar rules and local investors. Jack chose the opposite path. He believed that if a company wanted global respect, it had to stand under global scrutiny. In 2014, Alibaba prepared for its initial public offering on the New York Stock Exchange. The world watched. Financial institutions analyzed numbers. Media questioned leadership. Critics doubted whether a Chinese company built on small sellers could succeed internationally. Jack Ma did not respond to the noise. He focused on the message. Alibaba was not going public to celebrate success. It was going public to represent small businesses. On the day of the IPO, Alibaba raised an unprecedented amount of capital. It became the largest public offering in history at that time. Screens across major cities displayed the company's name. Investors rushed in. Analysts adjusted their expectations. In a single moment, the former English teacher, who had been rejected repeatedly, was now leading one of the most valuable companies in the world. But Jack Ma's reaction surprised everyone. He did not speak about wealth. He did not celebrate power. Instead, he thanked the people who had been ignored. He thanked the sellers who trusted the platform. He thanked the employees who worked without certainty. He even thanked those who had rejected him, because failure had strengthened him. To Jack, the IPO was not an ending. It was proof. Proof that a company built for small players could win globally. Proof that technology guided by purpose could scale. Proof that China could create world-class innovation on its own terms. After the IPO, Alibaba became a symbol, not just of economic power, but of possibility. Young entrepreneurs across Asia began launching online shops. Farmers sold directly to cities. Students built businesses from dorm rooms. Ordinary people entered the digital economy for the first time. Jack Ma became a global figure. He spoke at international forums. He met world leaders. He shared stages with influential innovators. Yet his message remained unchanged. "I am not a genius," he said. "I am just someone who did not give up." At the peak of success, Alibaba seemed unstoppable. Growth was strong. Influence was expanding. Confidence was high. But history has a pattern. When power reaches its highest point, it is tested. Reaching the top does not mean safety. Sometimes it means exposure. By the late 2010s, Alibaba was no longer seen as just a business. It had become a system that touched nearly every part of daily life. Shopping, payments, logistics, cloud services. Alibaba was everywhere. And when a company becomes that influential, attention turns into scrutiny. The government began to look more closely. In 2020, Jack Ma stood on a stage in Shanghai and spoke openly. He criticized the traditional financial system. He questioned outdated regulations. He argued that innovation was being held back by fear and old thinking. To many entrepreneurs, his words sounded brave. To regulators, they sounded dangerous. That speech changed the direction of everything. At the same time, Ant Group, the financial arm built from Alibaba's payment system, was preparing for a historic public offering. Expectations were massive. Investors were confident. The launch was meant to break records. Then, suddenly, it stopped. Just days before the listing, the plan was suspended. No gradual warning. No negotiation in public. The message was immediate and clear. Power in China has boundaries, and those boundaries cannot be crossed. After that moment, Jack Ma disappeared from public view. No speeches, no interviews, no appearances. Speculation filled the silence. People asked questions, rumors spread. But the reality was simpler and more serious. This was not about punishment. It was about control. Soon after, investigations followed. Authorities accused Alibaba of unfair competition and excessive market dominance. They argued that the company had used its power to limit choice and pressure sellers. In response, Alibaba was fined a record amount. The message was undeniable. You can be large. You can be successful. But you cannot operate outside the system. Alibaba had to change. The company adjusted its structure. It worked closely with regulators. It reduced public ambition and replaced it with cooperation. Growth was no longer the priority. Survival was. Jack Ma stepped back from leadership roles. He reduced his visibility. He shifted his focus toward education and philanthropy. This was not retreat out of fear. It was strategic silence. He once said, "When you are small, you rely on your brain. When you are big, you rely on your heart." This was the moment to listen, not to challenge. Investors reacted with concern. Market value dropped. Confidence weakened. Many people began asking the same question. Is this the end of Alibaba? But beneath the headlines, the foundation remained strong. Hundreds of millions of users were still active. Revenue continued to flow. Infrastructure remained unmatched. Alibaba was not collapsing. It was being reshaped. This period forced the company to mature, to slow down, to reconsider its role. Power had brought success. Humility would now bring survival. And in silence, preparation was happening. After the storm, silence followed. Alibaba was no longer chasing headlines. Jack Ma was no longer standing at the center of the stage. But something important was happening quietly. The company began to slow down, not because it was weak, but because it was thinking. For the first time in many years, growth was not the main question. Meaning was. Alibaba asked itself a difficult thing. What are we really here for? The answer was not new. It had been there from the beginning. Alibaba was created to make it easier to do business for ordinary people. That mission did not disappear with success, power, or pressure. It only became harder to protect. So the company changed direction. Instead of acting as one massive structure, Alibaba reorganized itself into independent groups. Each part focused on a clear responsibility: commerce, logistics, cloud services, digital finance, international platforms, media. This reduced risk, increased transparency, and allowed innovation to happen without threatening the entire system. It was not about becoming bigger. It was about becoming more stable. At the same time, the focus returned to small businesses. Fees were reduced. Tools were improved. Training programs expanded. Alibaba wanted to remind people that it still stood on the same side as before, the side of sellers, creators, and everyday users. Jack Ma, now mostly out of public view, shifted his energy elsewhere. He invested time in education. He supported teachers in rural areas. He helped young people who reminded him of his own early struggles. He no longer needed to prove anything. He had already built what mattered. Because Alibaba was never just a company. It was a bridge between villages and cities, between producers and buyers, between people with ideas and people with opportunity. Millions of farmers sold products beyond their hometowns. Small workshops reached foreign markets. Students created businesses with nothing more than a phone and determination. These stories did not appear on stock charts, but they defined Alibaba's true impact. Power usually flows upward. Alibaba redirected it outward. That is why the company survived pressure that destroyed others. Not because it was untouchable, but because it was rooted in people's lives. Removing it would mean removing opportunity for millions. Jack Ma once shared a simple thought. Today is hard, tomorrow is harder, but the day after tomorrow is beautiful. Most people give up tomorrow. Alibaba's story is proof of that idea. It did not win by being perfect. It did not win by being the strongest. It won by staying. And that is the legacy. Not wealth, not dominance, but endurance with purpose. Alibaba's story does not end with Jack Ma stepping away. It continues every time someone with little power finds a way forward. And that is why this story still matters, because it is not about one man, but about what becomes possible when belief outlasts fear. Alibaba's story does not end with a speech, an IPO, or a founder stepping back. It ends and begins again with ordinary people. A farmer who sells beyond his village, a student who opens a shop with only a phone, a family business that finally finds a market. Jack Ma never built Alibaba to prove he was smart. He built it to prove that people who start late, fail often, and begin with nothing still deserve a chance. The company survived not because it avoided mistakes, but because it stayed close to its purpose. When power tested it, Alibaba learned to slow down. When pressure arrived, it chose endurance over ego. That is the lesson. Success is not about winning once. It is about staying useful.